information purposes, if you would like to take and provide some updates from the district.
Yes, well, thank you, Dr. Blakely. It's a real pleasure to be here. Yes,
If I may, Mr. Chairman, do you mind restating that to ensure that it's on camera that your meeting is for informational purposes only due to lack of quorum at this present time?
Yes, we are meeting currently for information purposes only, as we have not established quorum. So we'll be giving some updates from our superintendent from the district at this time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. Blakely, but thank you really for this opportunity to be here today, just to speak to you all. We had some pretty momentous occasion recently. Being a superintendent is like running a relay race. You have a baton in your hand and you run, and then eventually at some point you hand the baton to the next person. And as an interim superintendent, that was always my role was to basically take what Dr. Atkins had started in his time period through almost 6 years, attempt to benefit from the contributions that he made, but then also help stabilize the organization for the next leader who, through a national search process, we eventually resulted in the selection of Dr. Christopher Bernier. And he recently, this most recent board meeting, through a vote of 7-0, had a contract approved with a start date in mid-May. That contract really kind of spells out a very solid work contract for our next superintendent, knowing that there's a lot of unique political turbulence out there relative to things such as an elected superintendent bill, which cleared both the House and the Senate. And so that will, if it is eventually signed into law through the governor's office, what that would result in is on this fall ballot, there would be, as a referendum, the opportunity for voters to decide whether or not we will have an elected superintendent. They will vote yes or no on that. And then if they vote to have an elected superintendent, then in the 24 election, that is when that person would, that candidate pool would run for that office. So that's unique, but then even more time sensitive is we have 4 board member seats that are up this fall. 2 of which who have not stated any intent to run again, and then 2 others who are already active in their campaigning to keep their incumbent seats. So it's a very interesting time politically, but at the same time, we are very fortunate to have Dr. Bernier. He is a very highly regarded applicant who came from, he was a Floridian as well, so he has a great history with some really strong mentors throughout his Florida experience, but he most recently has served as a chief of staff in the 5th largest district in the country, which is in Las Vegas. So with his starting in mid-May, that's between now and then will be the end of my interim superintendent period. Once he is sworn in, then he will become the superintendent. The unique thing within his contract is a month of consultancy overlap. And during that consultancy time period, he is more of an advisor that is both functional while he attempts to secure residents in this area, as well as just an opportunity to learn the organization, much in the same way that anyone coming in has an onboarding time period. This allows him to really understand what's going on here in the district, to get to meet people and hear from folks as he works on finalizing what is his first 100-day entry plan. So that's an opportunity for him then to hit the ground running. He has already been shadowing me for about a month now, which he has listened in on board member one-to-ones. He has listened in on cabinet meetings, and he and I have weekly phone calls where he asks questions and I provide answers to those things. So these are all just ways that we are trying to demonstrate an extremely seamless transition from not only where Dr. Atkins was to my quick onboarding within the organization in this role, but then now to a person who is new to us in Lee County and has a lot to learn about our county, but really brings a lot of expertise to this role right out of the gate. So those are kind of the big, broad pieces of that Dr. Bernier timeline. And then I was also asked to just share a few of the unique experiences that I've had in this piece. And so I don't know if it's appropriate yet to share those. That'd be okay? So the first thing I want to say is when I had the great privilege of taking on this interim role, the very first conversation that I had with senior staff was really to make sure that we were looking at compensation and really working conditions, knowing back in June, we were anticipating really more of a normal school year. At that time, the pandemic that we had experienced up to that point, the numbers were drastically lower. So back in June at that time period, the infection rates were extremely low, lowest we'd really seen. And while we knew out there that there was a new variant that was circulating at that time, Delta, it had not yet really made its presence known in the United States at that time period. But we did already have vacancies at that time. So when I sat down with the group of chiefs, a lot of it was focused on just knowing that we won't have people walking in the door to take on some of our vacant positions, and knowing that that means we're going to ask so much of the people we have that are here. That was really a big focus of that original time period. And then that began a long period of working with our partners in the union, beginning pre-negotiations, as well as then through a formal interest-based bargaining process, which is still underway at this time. So the second piece was, I really, as an interim, one of my primary obligations was to try to take an inventory of what are the concerns in our community about what's working well, what can improve, and things along those lines. And so I began a listening tour where I met with every single principal in the district, including a number of charter principals. And I met with every single one. That took a long time to do it. But what I was looking for from principals was feedback. We as a district have really attempted to try to serve their interests in the students, but how are we doing in that charge? And so I really started there. That took a long time to get through all those, but we made it through June and July to get every single principal in the district here and to talk to them. Then to start the school year, the mission was to go out and actually just go visit the schools. And so I began 5 to 8 school visits every single week to go and actually see how were our students and teachers doing in spite of some of these new challenges. And of course, this happened to coincide with the beginning of the school year when the Delta variant hit us, which was about 4 times as many infections as what we had seen through any part of the prior year. So it was a really dramatic and difficult time for us to open our school year. And of course, with the staffing shortages we already had, it was just a very tumultuous time. And that's all kind of aligning with what we saw was a real shift in the political landscape. That the level of division and politics really being very polarized really impacted us, not just at our board meetings, which I think is pretty well known, that was something pretty evident, but even in our schools, administrators were finding that they were being challenged by parents and, give me a pause, I know, but okay, I didn't want to establish or anything like that. And so the politics that we're actually making their way into our schoolhouse in a way that was pretty pronounced. It's something that our administrators really had never experienced before, being challenged in such overt ways where the decisions they were made were being sometimes construed as if they were political, when in reality they were just trying their very best to balance what is obviously a very divided society, not just something here in Lee County, but really all across our country and our world. And so balancing all of those things while trying to provide an education was really a tremendous opportunity for me as a leader in a system of this magnitude to really get a front row opportunity to see how do you, through such a difficult time, try to provide stability and calm and focus for a system of this size. So that was just another piece of that. The other thing I did simultaneously was really get out into the community, really attempted to reestablish our rapport with local government, business leaders, higher education, community groups, nonprofits, really an opportunity to re-engage with folks who have common interest in our community, and in some cases have great synergistic opportunities with our school system. And so it was really an opportunity through all of this difficult time to really engage in a much more direct way there as well. So I really had an opportunity to just down meet a lot of these leaders, and through that experience, just tons of opportunity to see that if we work together collectively, we can address almost any of the challenges that we face, and it can do it in a way that is empowering and uplifting as opposed to controversial and fragmenting. So the other piece that I had to begin was the foundation of setting some groundwork for some of the systemic challenges that we as an organization are facing over the next, not just now, but for multiple years to come. Things such as our salary compression, we have a real issue where through the state legislature, they approved to raise starting teacher salary. And that politically is very wonderful to be able to attract new teachers to our state by setting the minimum statewide salary level at $47,500. That's a wonderful thing to attract brand new teachers. The problem by setting that threshold without any type of strategy to address longer term teachers is you have teachers who've been teaching 10 years, 15 years. These are the folks who mentor these brand new teachers. They may only be making a few $100s more than a brand new teacher. So it's wonderful to attract great new teachers to the profession when your more veteran staff and folks who've been doing it for an entire career are seeing that I've been here all this time, what about me? Well, there isn't any funding set aside to address that type of piece. That was not addressed with the legislature. So how do we as a district, as a local governing body, what do we do about that? And that's what we refer to as salary compression, to try to also increase the folks who don't. So that's a huge opportunity and not an easy one with any type of immediate solution. Do you address it through the millage flexibility we used to have and no longer have? Do we address it by, the way that I chose to at least initially go at this as early as November was to really start looking at our organization, all the recurring funds that we have, vacancies, things where you clearly have money that you can't spend because you don't have the people to fill those positions, and utilize a really deep analysis of our existing budgetary constraints. And I met with the team and then supported that work from November through December through the present, because really it's one giant pot of money. It is expressed like a pie chart. And so anytime you are trying to spend more in one area, by virtue of doing that, you have to take from somewhere else to do it. There aren't, unless you introduce new revenue into the conversation. And so those are huge systemic issues that we're having to address, salary compression just being one of them. The other piece I would just say is, of course, we all know rising healthcare costs, but the challenge in our district is that in spite of the rising healthcare costs, we have continued to pick lower and lower quality plans and require more contributions from our employees. So the problem in that type of environment is not only are you already utilizing a very low-end insurance plan, but you're also expecting more money from your employees. And the problem with that is that eventually there comes a cliff where you can't get any lower quality of a plan. And if you keep increasing the cost of the employees, you'll no longer be able to give them any type of salary increase whatsoever, and that's just to keep with the bare minimum. So that's a huge systemic problem that there was no long-term plan for. There's no long-term solution, just like the salary compression. So as an organization, it's okay to have big challenges, but you have to begin a body of work to start to strategically focus what is the plan over the next 3 to 4 years, 1 to 2 years, 3 to 4 years, to really address these issues incrementally. And so these are some of the really important pieces of work that I have really tried to focus the organization around so that it's not just the sky is falling, but what can we do about it? And that means you have to really take the time to address these things and have that body of work. And the last thing that I would just mention is the governance team. We have a 7-member elected school board. And when I interviewed all those principals and talked to a lot of folks, one of the things I heard back was way too political, very distracting, dysfunctional, not about kids. The concern that you have when you hear feedback like that from your school leaders is that there's a disconnect between the central office and the schools, between the governing board and the schools, what's really happening and what's happening here. And this becomes kind of a 3-ring circus. And so one of the major objectives was to make sure that each of our 7 board members are properly respected for the role that they hold. We don't have to agree. We don't have to be friends. We don't have to go out and hang out and all that. But we have an obligation that all 7 members respect the role that they hold, and me as their employee and our school board attorney as the employee, that we help to provide as for me, I'm part of that governance team, that I can't control board members, but I can certainly hope to influence. And so I shared that very candid, direct feedback with each board member. I consistently tried to help be a part of how can we help board members feel as if they are empowered contributors. Not that there's factions, not that there's these 2 over here that get to make certain decisions and they get more input, and maybe these ones who don't get any input, and these ones who maybe are a swing vote. All of that is really dysfunctional and doesn't really allow us to do our jobs the way we should be able to do it. And so that's what I can say I'm very most proud of, is that we as a team worked together over these last months, and to see all 7 board members select our next leader unanimously, 7-0. When I spoke to principals in December and told them that was my vision, that I wanted the next superintendent to get 7 votes for that contract, and that was the priority. Many of them came to me afterwards and said, boy, you must have lost your mind. Are you naive? That can never happen. This group can never agree on anything. And 7 of them agreed on our next superintendent and gave that person a very solid contract to really allow the person to do their job. So I think for me, that is the part I'm most proud of, being a part of this governance team, that folks were willing to put aside and make sacrifices. And I think that's how you judge any organization, is the measure of the sacrifice that they are willing to make for the good of the whole organization, for the good of the community, for the children we depend on. And so I'm very proud to be a part of this team, that where we landed was a 7-0 vote for our next leader. Very excited about that. So those are kind of just some of the pieces. I hope that gives you kind of a mix of some of the short-term pieces, some of the longer-term pieces, and just some of the candid, as an advisory group to this board. Yeah, I really hope that that's helpful to you all as well. And I'm willing to take a couple questions if you have any questions based on anything I've said or anything I didn't say.
What I'll do is I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, so questions can be efficient.
Thank you so much.
So at this time, 6:04, we will call this meeting to order. So thank you for those who can make it in attendance, and I think we have one attending virtually. We appreciate you all's patience in this transition to a more in-person experience. We hope that is impactful. I don't believe that we have any public guests for comment. So at this time, as we mentioned on the agenda, we were starting with welcome and introduction. So we had our superintendent, Dr. Kenneth Savage, to provide some remarks. So if there are any questions from any of the advisory committee, we'll take questions at this time. Dr. Danielle?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be as candid as open, and I'll finish up with a question. You have been the person we needed in that very difficult turmoil. It's like we were in a hurricane and we were going up and down in the pandemic with all these changes with the board. But you've done a very good job, and I'm very, very serious that you've weathered it. Sometimes, I don't know, very difficult decisions. We showed the leadership, but I do hope that as Dr. Bania comes in, that you'll see how much work was done within that 1 year to do that. I really admire your priorities, because the great resignation can only be stopped if you also think about the teachers, not just the base salary of 47,000, but what do we do? For example, theoretically, we might have somebody who has been working 2 years getting $43,000 less than, because that's where I started. But there's so much you've done. I'm going to be very open with all the things you mentioned and ask you, what next for Dr. Savage?
Yeah, good question. Thank you for that. I will say my early conversation with Dr. Bernier have been very positive. He's had a chance to shadow me. He sees how I treat the board members. He watches those interactions, and he sees that my main approach is treat every single person the same. Whether they are critical of you or not, treat them the same. And that they have the same information, the same opportunity to influence the district. That is the freedom that is in their role, and he has seen that firsthand. He's also seen the way I work with the senior leaders, and so he's observed that. What he said he liked most about me that he's watched with staff is that I challenge them, because he knows how important that is, don't tell people what they want to hear, but really be willing to push for the most important results and outcomes, but do it humanely, I think was the word he used, that you do it humanely. Because the first job was bad cop. Sometimes you have people that make tough decisions, that can be a negative. But he said it's very humane, because at the end of the day, we're all paid to do a job. That's what we do here. These are jobs that we must do, and we have many people depending on us, the children, families, and so forth. So he has been very appreciative of the work that he's witnessed just directly. Then he's also watched our meetings. You can imagine someone who's really wanting to watch all of those meetings. And he did it for free. He was not being paid anything to do that, by the way. Sorry, that was supposed to be a joke, but he watched a lot of our board meetings. And he observed our dynamics, how we worked as a team, and he could see, and he would cite to me specific moments where he could see that I was trying to help be fair-handed and things along those lines. So I really appreciated the diligence on his part to do it. What he's essentially asked me to consider is a role that is very near and dear to my heart, but we're not ready to bring that out yet at this time. I would say that it's a role that really focuses on data, which is I'm a very passionate person about data and results. It's one thing to talk about great things, it's another thing to create good outcomes for kids, for our organization. I think it's necessary that we are accountable in that way. So he wants me to have a role that is very focused on that transparency of outcomes and to help create a sense of urgency in the organization around all the critical things that we must achieve. And so I'm very honored that that's where he kind of landed in terms of his thinking, because that's very much a part of who I am. And so I hope to for that, but we're not quite there yet. I think once that we are at a point where I can formally go forward with something, it would have to be board approved and so forth, and once that happens, but my intention in my contract was I would fulfill my interim role, and then as soon as that role was done, my new superintendent's ready to go, then I would resume a chief level role, which means I go back to the level that I was at in this organization, which is a chief level role, but the exact purview area was not defined in the contract, so that there would be that flexibility, knowing we didn't know how long the interim period would last, for that leader to really work with me to figure out what's the best fit. So right now, it's a really good fit in terms of what we think, but we're not ready yet to formally say that is exactly the role, because he needs to retain a little bit of flexibility, and I want to give him that flexibility so I can best serve.
Yeah, you've answered my question very well, and what I heard you say is you'll still be in the district.
That's correct.
And that's what I wanted to hear. And then one to the board member, it'd be nice, at least on a personal level, it'd be nice to have there's room for Dr. Savi in this district.
Oh, I would wholeheartedly agree.
Thank you. I had to say that. And
One
I
of
hope
the
that
things
is
he actually didn't mention, and I think that you should, is because it shines on him, is that it was one of my things to talk about. We just recently had an expulsion hearing, 3 of them in one day, which is usually unheard of, but we had 3, and they all had alternative to expulsion. We all agreed to alternative expulsions, and I think for me that's like a huge step, because in the past I have been one that voted against the board and the recommendation of the superintendent. So because it was expulsion, and I believe in second chances, and kids make dumb mistakes. I mean, I can say for myself, I made dumb mistakes as a kid, sometimes as an adult. So why ruin their life at this point when we're supposed to be educating them? And when you expel a child, we just released our job. And I don't think our job ends until they walk out this door completely. And even regardless if it's by choice or not, I think it's important that we make sure that we do our job. And that's actually holding us accountable and doing what our job is to make sure that every child exceeds beyond a diploma. I don't want them to have a GED, I want them to have a diploma. So that's really important for me. And as long as I'm in this role, I will always fight for that. And recognize the mistakes that we as a district have made to make them not successful. And those mistakes we have to take some responsibility. And I think by his recommendation was an alternative, and I really commend him that, because that's changed the whole mindset of what has happened in the past.
Thank you so much.
If I may,
Appreciate you.
if I may, Mr. Logan, just wanted to add, thank you, Ms. Giovanelli, for even bringing that up. So one of the big issues, and I think it's germane for a committee like this, is really the disproportionality that we've seen in terms of minority children and being expelled from the school environment. We study it from an out-of-school suspension data as well, and those are always bodies of work that we continue to evolve. But one area in expulsions is that historically here in the organization, when students committed a zero tolerance act, they were just expelled. And so the board would convene simply to ratify an expulsion. The concern as an educator is that I knew from other districts that are high-performing districts that there are some districts who don't expel anyone. They don't expel. even though we're all beholden to the same zero tolerance statutes. And if you really read the statute, there is discretion to have an alternative plan. That had not been presented here in a prior way, that just was not done. And so one of my pieces is I have to make a recommendation that I can live with as an educator, what I know, is that expulsions do not fix the problem. If you simply expel a student, that doesn't make anyone safer, the student, the community, the children in that school. A good example of that I bring up routinely is Nicholas Cruz. Nicholas Cruz is one of the most famous situations that we have in our state in terms of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, where many people lost their life. Nicholas Cruz was an expelled student who then went back onto the campus and took the lives of many other people. We learned from that. The whole commission came from that. So many things we learned from that. So just simply expelling doesn't help anyone. However, you do want the safety. You want to make sure that when students commit these egregious acts, that there's proper safety. And so that's where these alternative recommendations came in. It was something I was very passionate about. I just refused to make. Now, the board could always overrule me and just expel them anyways, but I had to take every case based on the exact facts that are there and really analyze those and look at the range of options that we have available to us and make a recommendation that I can live with as an educator. And I would say at the same time, I think we need to expand our options, and we've shared that as well. We have some options, but we could use more. There's just such a tremendous need from a mental health standpoint, social service standpoint, and there's just a lot of opportunity. So that's another body of work I didn't go into because there's just too many things to mention. But that's something that I charge our academic services team to really go back, study these districts such as Miami, such as even Collier. So for anyone who says, well, that's liberal, over in Miami, they're very liberal. The reality is this isn't a liberal or conservative issue. This is it's about studying the impact and the results that our decisions, the consequences that our decisions have for not just the children, but the whole community, on what their lives look like. So, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question about something you said. You said that it would be appropriate for a committee such as this to study the disproportionality of minority children to expulsion. Were you talking about this district in particular, or were you talking about in general? And then I have a follow-up.
I think both. It's a frame of reference
So
but I
why
think ours specific.
I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you've looked at the issue, what are your thoughts as to why that occurs in Lee County?
Yeah, I think it's obviously very complex issue, but I think the largest issue that we have to look at, really in the South in general, is the socioeconomic inequality that also is evident through our racial disproportionality as well. So that because the South, one of the issues that we've had, because this isn't a Lee County only issue, this is something that when I was at the state level, we studied as well. It's a major issue from an equity standpoint. And I would say that when we are able to look at where it's working best, where districts are showing the ability over time, because none of these are magic solutions, but where districts are showing a real positive change over time, those become very compelling stories because they're doing it within the context that we should be comparing ourselves to. The problem is no two communities are exactly the same. And so the reason why I focus on the socioeconomic side of that is because, for example, the diversity we see in Miami is fundamentally different from the diversity we have here. Yes, it's true on paper. We have a similar number of students who speak a different language. However, the level of socioeconomic diversity within these communities are completely different. Where students immigrate to our area, where they come from in versus Miami, are just so dramatically different that to compare them as apples to apples on a purely data conversation would be inappropriate.
Yeah, I don't have any empirical evidence for this, and I know we're going to talk about this later on in the agenda with Mrs. Rivera. But I feel that part of the reason of the disproportionality, in addition to the factors you say, is that there's less tolerance to minority students by educators.
Yeah, implicit bias is pretty well, it's part of our literature in terms of understanding. I would say that's part of the charge that we have as a district, part of the reason why I'm blessed to be sitting next to two folks to my left a small but mighty group that really are trying to help provide leadership and reflection to all of our leaders so that our leaders are asking different questions, more robust questions, and go engaging in deeper reflection to consider not just in our hiring practices, but in every aspect of the way we operate as an organization. And I think it's become, to tether it back to one of the earlier conversations, I think it's becoming a more challenging space, I would say particularly in Florida right now, with the nature of what's happening politically, it's becoming even more challenging to engage in that work without it being viewed as a political
I
exchange.
agree with you.
Good question.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Stephanie. I'm surprised, I mean, I do know that you were contacted before, I know you know Dr. Chapman. I know that, there was a meeting scheduled, with you and somebody else interceded and the meeting had to be canceled. But, well, if you don't know that, then it's best you don't know that. But, one of the reasons I even joined this committee, this diversity committee, was for what you just spoke upon. And it does have to do with the minority population being more, the punishments, being more, imposed more upon the minority population than the other population, even though the minority population in Lee County is greater than the other population. And one of the reasons I believe is the administration, the teachers cannot relate to the students. And part of that reason is because the personnel. I know you have a teacher shortage, but if you can't relate to the student, you don't know that student's background. You can't relate to, and unfortunately, even though I'm considered a minority, but I'm from the north. And don't laugh because my children laugh at that, okay?
Sorry.
But, oh, you laughed at me?
No, because you said not to.
That's right.
But when I first came here, my vernacular, my pronunciation is not the way the Southerners speak. I didn't know what a swamp cabbage soup is, and I'm finna go nowhere, and all that stuff, but I don't consider myself any better or more upper than anyone else. But that's not the way I speak. My major in school was English. So sometimes I'll ignore you when you speak like that. Of course I know what you're talking about, but regardless. But some of my own people thought that I was, but regardless, I can still relate to you. I understand exactly what you're saying. But that doesn't make me any different than and I won't treat you any differently. But people of another race, before they even listen to, or when they listen to that young child, and that child doesn't speak, unfortunately, when that child speaks differently than the way I'm speaking to you, they automatically turn off. And they stop listening. Now, I've spoken with parents. I went to school with parents because they said, Miss House, will you go with me? They're scared of the administrators because they talk down to them. I don't like that. That offends me. And they're scared of them. Whether it's a principal, even a secretary, get away from me. That's not right. You can't treat people that way. So sometimes part of the problem is the environment, I know there's great educators in the whole school system, but you have to start at that bottom. Beautiful people like this young lady here, the young lady sitting next to you. Some people have to be retrained, especially in the environment like you're talking about right now, the political system we're dealing with right now. You cannot automatically judge by this, especially in the South. But when you have people that are scared to approach the school because the way they're already scared their child, I know people right now that are having problems with the school system. And they call me the way the teacher talks to their child. That's not good. Just the way you talk to a minority child,
Yeah.
that's not good. Okay.
So many years ago now, and Mr. Edie can remind us, because I can't remember the name of the group, but we were supposed to do we were starting a restorative practice. I started with that committee. What was it called? I forget what was it called. With, and we had with Judge Teskey and I might be saying his name wrong, at Success Academy, and we had a group, and it was a whole group of people. We were supposed to, the school was gonna implement restorative practices, which they attempted to do that, but they stopped the committee because they had what judge was it?
Was it Judge Hayward?
Hayward, no, it wasn't Judge Hayward, no, it wasn't, should have been, but it wasn't. No, it was, and Kathy Smith from the
Public defenders,
pardon me?
public defender's office.
Yeah, Public Defender's Office, remember, we had several meetings here, but we had one, maybe it was before you,
Yes, ma'am.
it was before you, and I can't think of the name of it. But-
I'll ask around though.
Because it was before your job, because your job came later, actually. But they set out to have restorative practices through the district and through, Pete Bohatch was in attendance, but so many other community members were involved in it. And it died, and I didn't understand why it died. Somebody put a squash on it, and I'm not sure who. It wasn't me, I can assure you. And it was just what you're talking about, educating everyone to be on the same page to implement the practices correctly. Because that was one of my biggest concerns is, yes, we can say we're practicing restorative practices, but what is that like at one school versus another school? You know, the round tables and stuff like that, which honestly hasn't been implemented properly and hasn't been, not every school does it the same, and so that's more of a problem than what it initially set out to be. And so I'm very concerned, but the mindset was there, the follow through wasn't, and it just literally died, and it should have somewhat continued. Actually, EDAC was probably formed shortly thereafter. But it's something that is needed. And Judge Teskey came from Atlanta area, and what he had a program where he always second chances for all students, and he had such the data that was behind it and how it was so effective in the results. And he brought some of his kids to testify and talk about it, and it was just a wonderful thing. And I'll send you an email because I have information in my office from it, because I attended every meeting because I was so passionate about it, because I just think it's people's vision is, and the perspectives are all different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our problem, you know, they don't think that, you know, I've had people come to me, and say, you know, there's no such thing as white privilege. I said, well, it depends on whose shoes you're in.
Mhm.
I mean, I said, it does happen, it's happening at the school district, I've seen it, I witness it. I know, and I can only use this job to keep telling people about it, because it does happen. And that's where I'll leave here saying and fighting for that, because I'm all about fairness and everybody be treated the same, because we all are here with the same reason. I mean, there's no different, someone shouldn't have more of an education than another, and I'm here to make sure that it's all the same for all, and all means all. And so, I wish there was somebody else in this room that knew about that group, because it was a large group. It had a lot of movers and shakers that were really wanting to see the success, and it just literally died. It was a judge that retired, and I can't think of the gentleman's name. If you said it, I would know.
Who's told?
It wasn't Starnes. Should have been him too, but it wasn't. This judge had already retired, and actually was like the chairman, like he was almost running it, and it was a very large group. We spent a day at ALC, with Judge Teskey and his group coming from Atlanta, and I'll have to Google it. But it was wonderful, thank you, sorry,
No, thank
talking
you.
about it.
We have one question that we're gonna go to our agenda, so. Do I have Mr. Quisenberry first?
Okay.
Speaking of restorative practices, I don't know if you guys know Chuck Bradley, but he runs a restorative practice seminar every summer for people who are learning about restorative practices, and then also refreshers annually for people who are just want to stay sharp on restorative practices. So it's still out there. I don't know if it's the same group that started with you, Ms. G and Nelly, but the work is still being done for, I know, equity coordinators, one from my school, and other individuals that sign up for a PD through restorative practices. And at least at Gateway High School, that was one of our trainings we did this year to start the year, was restorative practices. And it's what we use throughout our student services department to lower our number of students who are being suspended out of school. We do have a high minority population being in the East Zone. And so it is our intent to keep as many kids in the school building each day as possible. So the work is being done. I can't speak for all the high schools in the district, but there's at least one working towards it.
Right, well, see, that's the problem though. We all have to be on the same page and we all have to be, everybody has to have a buy-in on it, otherwise it doesn't work. And you can't have one school doing it and one that's not. We have to be consistent throughout. That is the biggest thing. And so the resources and education side of it has to all be the same and not one's idea and thought, and it has to be uniform and that we're all doing the same thing, because the outcome will be the same at that point. It won't be unfair.
Thank you, Dr. Savage, for your comments and entertaining our questions. We invite you to hang out with us if you would like. So, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented today.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Danielle, seconded. Seconded by Mr. Baxter. Any discussion? All in favor? By unanimous consent, we approve the agenda. Also in your folders, you should receive when you enter, should be a copy of the minutes from February 15th, 2022. Again, we'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I would like to move that we adopt the minutes as they are provided to us, with a comment that I noticed. I don't know whether it's Mr. Bell who talked about there should be more details sometimes in minutes, but that is okay. But this is good, so.
So I actually had a motion from Dr. Quisenberry to approve the minutes. Are you seconding that?
Yeah,
Before you
okay.
raise a statement, you raise his hand.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Any discussion?
I just said maybe a few more details as mentioned earlier on. It's not a big deal, the content is good. Approved.
All in favor?
And just one point, to your point, I'll share again, Dr. Dianui, the minutes are crafted to maintain the actions that are taken or not taken from the
Right.
meeting, but not necessarily a running tally of the deliberation or discussion.
Okay,
So until we receive further direction from the staff or the board's chief legal counsel, we'll continue just to record the minutes as the motions that are made, the actions that are taken with the motions until we get further direction.
thanks, and I respect that because they also recorded, so if you want more details, you can get it from the
Yes.
record flash.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Ms. Torres-Nunez, there was no public comment.
There's no public comment.
So at this time, we'll move to our agenda item 6, our HR recruitment strategies from our Assistant Director of Recruitment, Ms. Suzette Rivera. So, you want to just stay here or?
I can sit right here. Yeah.
So, Suzette Rivera will take the floor now.
There is no.
There it is.
Oh, perfect. This takes a long minute. Thank you for having me tonight. So I'm Suzette Rivera, I'm the Assistant Director here at the Recruitment Department. I've been in my role since 2017, and before that, I was a coordinator in recruitment since 2014. Even prior to that, I was a teacher in the classroom, so I know firsthand what it's like to be in the classroom. I worked here at a Title I school, and then I also moved out of state, so I have experience teaching in New Mexico and in Idaho. So very random, that's for conversation at a later time. So what I love about this committee is that last year I had the opportunity to present to you all about teacher recruitment and retention strategies, and we came away with some great ideas and initiatives. And so I'm excited to come back today and share an update with you all, as well as the reason why I'm sitting and have paper next to me is I'm ready to take some feedback from your committee and hopefully have some new initiatives moving forward with this year, because as we know, recruitment has changed. Teacher recruitment has changed, especially with the pandemic. So the objectives we're going to go through tonight, we're going to look at the current recruitment trends, so here locally as well as nationally. We'll look at some district initiatives, things that we've been doing, how it's been working for us, as well as some strategies for teacher recruitment and retention. And so I'll lead you all with some focus questions that we'll start the presentation with, and then at the end we'll circle back to them. Hopefully, as you listen to some of our initiatives and things that we're talking about, you will have some ideas or some feedback you can provide to us. So the first one being, with the increased cost of living, what are some resources we can use to recruit and retain teachers? And then the second one being, considering some barriers we see, what are some possible strategies to recruit and retain diverse populations of teachers? Because as we heard earlier, the student population is not mirroring the teacher population. So what can we do to help increase that? Because that is a barrier that we recognize as a district, but we need some support and we need some ideas how we can make that grow. So for purpose of common vocabulary for tonight, so just so you're aware, when I mention HBCU, that stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities. And when I mention HSI, those are Hispanic Serving Institutes. So some of the logos that you have here are the ones that we most frequently work with. So Florida A&M is an HBCU, UCF is an HSI, Bethune-Cookman is an HBCU, FAU in Boca Raton is HSI, and then most recently FSW was named an HSI, so that's right here in Fort Myers, so we're excited about that. Okay, so looking at the current status of college of education graduates. So we were talking a little bit earlier about the number of teacher graduates that we have, and this number has been shared. A similar number was shared at last year's committee, but I wanted to provide you a little update. So 83,946, those are the number of teacher candidates that are graduating in the nation. So if you looked 10 years ago, that number was a little over 102,000. So as you can see, even though our population is growing, our teacher education graduates are declining. And then out of that 83,000, a little over 21,000 in the country are graduating from who identify as a race other than white. So that number is getting smaller. In the state of Florida, we have a little over 4,000 student candidates that graduate from teacher colleges, and that number is even smaller for teachers that are graduating from HBCUs and HSIs. So this is a very big problem when we're trying to recruit. So if you think about the number 44,000 teachers that graduate in Florida, Palm Beach County alone has to hire about 1,000 teachers a year. So some of our larger partner districts have an opportunity to really attract some of those candidates.
So let's just get those numbers, please. I just want to be very clear, I get those numbers. Could you go back to the slide?
Yes, absolutely.
So you're talking about the whole United States, 83,000.
Yes, sir.
You're talking about the whole United States minority, other than white, 21,000.
Yes, sir.
From Alaska to Hawaii
Yes, sir.
to wherever. Take me back to Florida. How many are we producing total?
So Florida was a little over 44,000.
4,000.
Yes.
How many minority? How many other than white?
Even smaller. We're trying to get that number right now from I know from last year, HBCUs had about 60 candidates that had graduated from colleges of education in Florida. 60. Yeah.
We're in trouble.
We are in trouble. Yeah. And I'll show you a little bit later some of the events that we will be attending this year, and you'll see how some of the events had to consolidate because they don't have enough teacher candidates to produce a full-on teacher recruitment fair. And one of those events is FAMU. So FAMU used to have a College of Education fair. They no longer do that. They have combined with a couple other colleges to produce a bigger recruitment fair, not just teacher fair. So I'll share that a little bit later. So this next slide, the Great Resignation, this was presented at one of our recent board meetings. So these are some data that was collected nationally about some hiring issues in our K-12 schools. So on the left-hand side, one of the questions that was asked to hiring managers for K-12 locations was how much of a problem are staffing shortages at your school or district this year? And you can see that 25% said severe, which is that strawberry color, and then 15% was very severe. And the next graph on the right-hand side, they were asked, since the start of the school year, my district and or school has struggled to hire a sufficient number of, and one of the highest ones, 77% said substitute teachers, well here in Lee County we call them guest teachers. Bus drivers was second, paras, and then full-time teachers was fourth. So then the survey was asked again later on in the year, so in November of 2021. So hiring managers were again asked, compared to the beginning of the school year, staffing shortages in my district are, and you can see the more severe grew to 52%. So this is a nationwide problem, and as the pandemic continued and as the new variants came through, it just created a big teacher shortage vacancy throughout the nation. And so I want to share with you a little bit about some department initiatives that we have in recruitment. So I do have a staff of, I have 2 full-time recruitment coordinators, and they're focused, I have one person that's focused on recruitment with FGCU and FSW, as well as our parent to teacher program, and then another person that's supporting our career changers. We also have a coordinator that works on the leadership side, but he also supports on the minority recruitment side as well. And so that's Dr. Stan, and I'll share some of his initiatives that he's worked on this year, which we're really excited about. So some of the new initiatives, I know last year we came to the event, or to our committee, to the EDAC committee to present. Something that came out of it was to, how do we get out more into the community and share more of what we're doing? So something I wanna highlight here, we started, because of the feedback from EDAC, was our social lean networking events. So what we've done, our team goes every other month, and we do an event we host a networking event at a restaurant. And we pick different restaurants, and we do some marketing. We try to get people in the community to come out and talk to us in a casual setting. We provide food, we sometimes bring principals with us, and we just talk about not only teaching positions, but the fact that we're looking for bus drivers and we're looking for paraprofessionals. And we've had some great success. Our next event is actually taking place on the 31st of March. Dunbar Middle School is actually going to host it for us, and we're going to provide snacks and everything there too. So it's been a great way to really engage the community and talk to people that may be interested in a career with the school district of Lee County. Something else we're happy about is we streamline our application process. So for teacher candidates in the past, they couldn't see teaching positions unless they had first applied to a position called the instructional applicant pool. Once they applied to that position, they had to supply transcripts and a teaching certificate. With those documents, then they could see and apply for teaching positions. So we did a lot of surveying, a lot of conversating with applicants, and we took that process out, so now those applicants can see all teaching positions right away. We still require them to submit documents, but it's making it a lot easier, and we're able to now track to see which schools are getting the most applicants and see how we can help facilitate some recruitment strategies to schools that are not receiving applicants. So that was an initiative that started in January, the end of January of this year. We've also done some targeted recruitment events, so really hosting our own type of recruitment events, so whether it's virtual events or doing some private events. I know last year we did a networking event just for Bethune-Cookman alone, where Dr. Stannon hosted a virtual event with students who were able to engage with him and talk to him about opportunities here in the district. And then that's led to some future opportunities as well for other universities. And some initiatives and barriers for the recruitment of our teachers. So initiatives, we've done some deliberate candidate sourcing to schools. And then we've also increased our presence at HBCUs and HSIs as much as we can. Many of our campuses are still operating on a virtual experience. So those that have a virtual experience, we sign right up. Those that let us on campus, we go ahead and go on campus. And then I talked to you already about the community outreach through networking events. We've also another initiative we did this past December, which was really successful, was our classroom careers event, where we had a recruitment type fair here in the district office, and we invited anyone who wanted a career in the classroom. So that would have been a guest teacher, a teacher, or a paraprofessional. So we had all applicants come, and that was our first type of event like that. Some of the barriers that we've uncovered through recruitment, especially this year, as we've talked before, the number of graduates from the colleges of education are really small. We just attended a recruitment event for FSW this past Friday from their College of Education, and they have, I believe, 45 students graduating from their College of Ed in the spring. And typically your spring class is your largest cohort. So when you think of 45, I just wanted to, they're feeding into 5 counties. So they're interning here, they're interning in Collier, Henry County, Glades, and those districts are all looking for teachers as well. So they were all at the event too. Everybody was interviewing. These students probably walked away with multiple offers of employment. So it's their market, where they want to go.
You have a number, FGCU number?
FGCU is around I believe in the 70s. We have an event with them tomorrow on Wednesday, the College of Education. Yeah.
It's pathetic numbers. Anyway, continue.
So again, moving on to the barriers, the second bullet, reduction in standalone events for students in the College of Education. I alluded to that earlier in the presentation. So before, when we used to attend, a College of Education recruitment fair for FAMU, that's now turned into the College of Education plus Arts plus Humanities. So because they don't have enough students graduating from that college to host their own event. So they're one of the campuses that are still doing virtual events too, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And then something we've all heard of, I'm sure, if you live here in the community, is the increase in cost of living. That is something that's really concerning to us as we enter as we're in the recruitment season, because we know the starting salary for teachers, and we know that, cost of living, I think a 1-bedroom apartment I've seen now, it's about $1,600 in most places or higher.
It's not even available anyway.
Or it's
There are
not
no
available,
houses,
yeah,
see?
you're right. Yeah,
It's not there.
it's not. So we're we have some ideas coming up about that and how we can help facilitate some of that work, but it's gonna be a long road. And then some of our initiatives that we've worked on this year that are new to us, Drop In with Lee, this was an idea from Dr. Sannon. So we have on-demand Zoom hours with recruitment team members. So if you go to our careers page on leeschools.net and you click on the teacher tile that we're hiring teachers, you can actually pop into a Zoom room with one of my team members or myself from Monday through Friday, from 9 to 11, and we're just in there and we are answering questions, from if you have any questions about the application process or how to become a teacher. So our staff is available to do that from those hours. We also have monthly virtual interviews. So every month we're hosting our own virtual event. So tomorrow is our March virtual event. We have, I believe, 27 or 28 future teacher candidates that we're interviewing. And we do that to help people that cannot travel, to the area, but that plan to move here, to be able to interview with us virtually. We do extend offers of employment at these events. And what that offer of employment guarantees the candidate is that we will help them get a teaching position here in the district. And of course, there's a few things that are contingent upon, they have to pass some of the screening process and they have to be certified in an area to teach. But we do guarantee them a teaching position here in the district with that offer of employment. And they're also placed on a hiring list that principals have access to pretty early on so they can start making those staffing and placement decisions for the next school year. The LEAD program is something that Dr. Sannon has taken on. So this is an Aspiring Leader Development Program. So what he's been doing is working with our current employees for the role of assistant principal. So this is great in the retention aspect and really building that pipeline that is going to be our future administrator. So right now we have the people that are in the assistant principal pool. So those might be people who are deans in our school, or maybe they're serving as a teacher leader type role or a peer collaborative teacher. But they've passed their FELE, they have their master's in educational leadership, they've been entered into the assistant principal pool, but they are missing some of the just some key things that may help them be successful as an assistant principal. So Dr. Sannon has enrolled them in this program and really working with them and meeting with them on a monthly basis to help, gain those skill sets. And then additional partnerships, so I've been working with FGCU, with Peter, on bringing international graduate students who are enrolled at FGCU, so we're really excited about that initiative and that program. And also we've been working with the Call Me Mr. program, I know we have some updates coming about that hopefully. Yeah, so that's 2 initiatives with our partner university to help bring teachers from diverse backgrounds to the district. Yes, Peter?
Can I mention about our initiative?
Yes, please, yes.
Because I think this is important. We talked about it sometime last year in EDAC, it kept on going on, and Suzette and I and a few other people have been meeting on this international recruitment. There are very many colleges out there, particularly in African universities, which are producing a lot of students. I mean, wonderful, amazing, first class. They become teachers, they're trained teachers. If they come to the FGCU, they come there to do their master's degree. But in the process, that partnership with FGCU allows what we are calling curricular practical training, so they can teach as they study. And so long as they're studying for their master's, for their doctorate, it's a win-win for the school district, for the university, for them, for everybody. And it's right now, more or less in a pilot, we have small numbers, but we think it can be expanded to Brazil, to wherever. It can be a tool for diversity, it can be expanded anywhere. It's a great.
It's also a great cultural experience for our students
Right.
in our K-12 setting and then for our principals too. So it's a really win-win situation for both parties. Yeah.
And
Excited
for everybody, because for this community particularly, that is a big source of diversity from, and we just target the areas we want right now, those African countries, we're getting them from Kenya and Nigeria for now. Wonderful.
Great, we're excited about it. And just a little update, oh yes, go ahead.
Just wanted to defer to
Oh, yes.
Dr. Blakely, if he had anything he wanted to offer and give context. I know we have new members who were not a part of us last year when we talked through the Call Me Mr. program, and a lot of it is now over with the university to work out its portion.
Yeah, so the Call Me Mr. program, for those who are not familiar, the program is designed to recruit predominantly Black male teachers into the teaching field. So what the program does is it connects students into a cohort style, I think undergraduate level, to be in the Mr. program, and with hopes that it will go back into the district that they come from. So for example, it will be students who are graduating from Lee County schools would enroll in the college of education at FGCU and be a part of this Call Me Mr. program. And upon graduation, they were returned back into the district to support the district that they returned to. So we're working with Dr. Tom Roberts, who is the interim dean of college education, and we're hoping to be able to bring this to fruition at FGCU. There is a chapter or a cohort at USF and I think two other schools in Florida. So we're looking to establish one at FGCU, so we're working to kind of finalize that.
And so, thank you for that partnership. We've been working on this for close to 2 years now, working through it. And the students would come back and have their student teaching experience at the lowest 20 or 25% of our elementary schools based on data. So it's an intentional pipeline. The onus would be on the university to establish the interlocal agreement with Clemson University. But I serve as a member of the College of Education's advisory board for the university. So he did bring it up at our last advisory meeting. And this is something that the district would be on the receiving end of the support. But Ms. Rivera has been a great partner. We've had a chance to meet. We met with Clemson University's team, with Dr. Blakely. And so working through that transition, so I wanted to make sure I gave you the deference, sir, to be able to provide that from the university standpoint, knowing that on the district side, we're our partners as well. So,
Thank you.
And actually, I hope everyone knows the acronym. What does the acronym mean? What does?
and Dr. Dianulli,
Sure thing,
actually, it started with your conference.
That's right.
A couple of years
The
ago,
conference.
it was 3 years ago.
That's right, it's called Mentors Instructing Students Towards Effective Role Models.
Can I add a comment? I just, cause as we were talking, I was thinking of something very similar to this. Is it possible when the school district partners with institutions like FGCU, Southwest Florida, I mean, they have development funds. I mean, they have funds that they get from donors that aren't necessarily accounted for. Could they offer incentives to, let's say, high schoolers that are identified, they wanna be teachers, they're Black, they're brown, this is a field they wanna go into, would these schools be willing to, these universities be willing to, give them some sort of tuition reduction scholarship, on the condition that they come back and they take a job for 2 years in the district, because that would create real incentives if they're getting some sort of, tuition reduction or a scholarship.
Yeah, that's how the part, the Call It Mentor program is aligned, is that they do receive tuition reimbursement for being part of that program, so for the most part, it's close to zero out-of-pocket expense for them when they're part of the program, so there are some funding that's tied to the Call It Mentor program with that. But I've made a note here during this time as well as working with our foundation about how, we just came off of HBCU Give Day, what can we do to have some campaigns specifically for education majors, like to your point about really being able to having the funding for those who are applying and wanna be education majors. So.
And off of that last point, but the Call Me Mr. program is geared toward identifying potential male teachers of color, but as Ms. Rivera would tell you, there's also opportunities to identify male teachers, period. So if you look at the teaching force, how do you have a balance just based on our cultural diversity, but also gender? The number of male teachers that are in the classroom. So that's why the strategies that Ms. Rivera is reviewing goes back to the information that's provided. When Mrs. Giovanelli and her colleagues look at the equity report every year, those are the numbers that the state asks us to look at. What are opportunities for you to lessen some of those gaps that appear? So those strategies are tied back to that. We're so grateful to have Dr. Blakely as your chairman, but also the partnership that he and I have been working on with Ms. Rivera over the few years. So I'll be quiet, Susan.
You're fine. So some of the things that we're using here, we talked a little bit about high school students. This is actually a great segue. We talked last year about piloting a future educator program at an elementary school. So we have not started that initiative yet because the way school year started with the pandemic and they were allowing less visitors into the school, it just seemed like a lot to put on our teachers in a school right now, but we do plan on doing this for the next school year. So this would be a group of students that we identify at the elementary level probably in the 4th or 5th grade that we, that show interest in becoming teachers, and then they go into a middle school that has a similar program, for future educator, and then for high school, hopefully they go to a teaching academy location. So starting at the elementary level. So right now we have it at the high school, we have it in some of the middle schools, but really starting early on to see if we can, start getting that interest and that passion from our little guys to go into teaching. We do offer a few scholarships, so we have partnered with Suncoast Grow Your Own, and we are very grateful for the funds that they've offered to us. So these are the 3 types of scholarships that we have through Suncoast. So for our high school students, we do offer a 4-year scholarship to attend a university where they can, obtain a degree in education. All of these scholarships, by the way, they come with a stipulation that they have to come back and teach in Lee County for a minimum of 3 years. So if they receive these funds, they gotta come back home and teach. The second one on here is a paraprofessional to teacher. So those are for paraprofessionals who have started a program in FSW or FGCU, and these funds would cover their last 2 years of school. And then for teacher retention, so that would be our 2nd or 3rd year, this is for current teachers. So teachers who are in their 2nd or 3rd year of their temporary certificate, they may have some outstanding coursework that needs to be taken. So this scholarship would pay for that coursework for them. And they also have to be at a tier 3 school, so those are some of our harder schools to staff. So for that scholarship, we've awarded 25 scholarships for Suncoast Grow Your Own in total. And then legislative Grow Your Own, so we have 2 tiers for this one. Again, another one focused for our high school students, so that's a 4-year scholarship. And then we also have our tier 2, which has been, really successful. These are our current FGCU and FSW students who have started their education in some other college, whatever it may be, but they've elected to change their major to go into the College of Education, and we would pay for those 2 years, which is really great. So we've awarded 21 scholarships through that legislative Grow Your Own, and everyone's still in progress. But we've had some recipients of the scholarship that have completed, and they're out there, and their stories have been shared through our social media and through some press news release. We're very grateful for that. Something else we've done too, we've taken out making sure our recruitment teams are diverse, so that when, for example, this is our picture from FSW the other day. So knowing that FSW is an HSI, we made sure that we had a diverse recruitment team to go there to reflect our population. We also try to do some social media with alumni. So this gentleman here, we highlighted him because he was an alumni from FAMU and he's one of our teachers. And then we've also been kicking off our initiatives for our marketing, our spring teacher recruitment fair, which is on Saturday, April 30th. And we really try to target all of our marketing, making sure that we show teachers or students of diverse backgrounds. And so those are really kind of some of our strategies that we've been working on this past year. And with everything, a lot of things still being virtual, it's key to very important to make sure that our marketing, stands out and is really, highlighting our district. So these are some of the events that we've attended or will be attending. I'm not gonna go through all of them for you, but I did mark so you can see the ones that are virtual. As you can see, a majority of them are virtual. And the hard part of a virtual environment, if you haven't experienced it, so today, for example, we had an event with Kutztown University in Pennsylvania and it was virtual. Well, those students have to seek us out instead of an appointment, a one-on-one appointment with us. Versus a normal traditional fair, we would have a booth and people would come by the booth and we could help engage people that maybe hadn't thought about Lee County or, were interested in something interesting that we had at our table. So the virtual options are very difficult because really the students that are coming to sign up with us already have a connection to us. Oh, I have a grandparent that lives in Lee County, or I've heard of this through somebody else. It's really hard to sell ourselves through virtual events, but we try the best we can with our marketing. But as you can see, a lot of them are still virtual. And I just want to point out that the event on 3/9, that's the FAMU event I was sharing with you, that it became an education, social science, arts, and humanities event.
But let me ask,
Yes.
I don't know whether this is the full list, but I don't see FGCU here, or am I missing something?
I only listed the events that are HSIs or HBCUs, but yes, we have several FGCU events. Yes. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out because I did not state that at the beginning. So yeah, these are just
I believe you also listed at the bottom.
the military.
Military.
Yes, yep. So we work with Troops to Teachers with Ron Burton, and he invited us to attend to host Recruit Military Career Fair on July 14th. So we try to recruit our veterans too that may be interested in a career change and wanting to be teachers. So, which is great. Thank you for pointing that out, Darren. Okay, so I'm gonna bring us back because we are, closing out to those questions. And I know that we've been over time, but the increased cost of living, some of those resources we can use to recruit and retain teachers. And then some of those barriers that we see, what are possible strategies to recruit and retain teachers from diverse populations? So that's something that we've, wanted to circle back on with you all.
Susan, whether we like it or not, what Dr. Savage was talking about, money is a miracle. And particularly, there's something he talked about, you have been able to put 47,000 as the starting point for new teachers. And before that was what, 41,000, something like that?
Yeah, it was like 40,000.
So I'm very worried about the teachers who were here 2-3 years ago.
Right.
We could lose them very easily. If the
Absolutely.
new teacher is getting 47 and I'm getting 43,000, and I'm here for 2 years. Or maybe I've just been given 47,100, I don't feel. So we could lose those teachers. I don't know what you're doing, but you have to think about them a lot.
Absolutely,
That's
you
a
do.
big one.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
And the new initiatives, I think they're great. The new initiatives, we have to get out of think behind them, like that international program. I still think once it takes off fully,
Yeah, we're really excited about it.
it could open up many doors.
Absolutely. Yes?
No.
Okay, you have your hand up. And just something to add here at the end. So, going forward with your upcoming discussions and yearly recommendations, I believe you do that now in April. How can we further the collaboration between your committee and human resources? Because you are an integral part of the conversation and the work that we do, with the recruitment and retention of teachers. And so I want to open that up to either to you all or something for you to think about when you have that discussion in April, when I know that's coming up, so. All right.
Is there data available on hires, new hires?
Yes.
And percentages
Sure.
of minority teachers?
There is actually, and I'm glad you brought that up. So Jarrett and I, we meet monthly, which is, a collaboration effort between our departments. And we actually have a department shared goal where we are looking to, close that gap between our underrepresented populations of students and teachers. And so we do have that data. that we looked at that data as a baseline and we're going to hopefully decrease that gap. So are you asking, is that a data request? Is that what you're?
Well, I think it would be a benefit if we're gonna make recommendations
Okay.
to see what the data says now
Sure.
for the committee to study.
And should I just work with you on that, Jared?
Yeah, so we'll share a copy of your KPI information
Perfect,
in advance of, and so just as a clarification for this slide, traditionally how the committee chair and the board liaison have worked the recommendation sessions, you all come back together with all the presentations you all have received, and there's a protocol that we established that worked relatively well for those who were here last year, hopefully. And you'll go back, so Suzette's just giving you all the focus question of what she would like to have feedback or recommendations for. But of course, with that, we provided a folder with all of the presentations that you all have received, so at the table for HR and recruitment, we'll include that information for the
Thank
KPI
you, Jared.
and the reduction of percentages.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have another point. Again, I'll be very open, I think your office is very understaffed compared to what we want from it. And I want to say that upfront, I want that to be very recorded very clearly. The board member is here, we are not giving it due respect. The many times Suzette has come to my classes, I am the interim leader of a program called Child and Youth Studies of students who probably failed the GKT, and others. They kind of could not go through the normal teacher training programs, and we have other areas they can work in Quinn, and all the other places. They're there, but some of them still want to get the education.
Yes.
So let me tell you, Suzette comes to the school, talks to them, and they're very excited. She talks very well, as you know. But then the follow-up cannot be there because there are very few people. You cannot be there every time. That follow-up is necessary with some of the students, even one-on-one, or them getting to you and emails and one-on-one. But I sometimes feel, oh my God, I'm talking to the poor lady to be doing all the work. I think your office needs more support. And I think those follow-ups are very, very important. Once you make the talk to the
Yes.
students, we need a little bit more follow-up of what's happening, because people forget.
Absolutely, and that's something that our department is really focused on this year because, we recruit, but then once we're done with an event, it's like on to the next one, it's on to the next one,
Right.
on to the next
Too
one, and you
much.
have to continue, your group is getting larger and larger and larger, so yeah, so we do have a plan for that. I have some great team members that have worked for a really detailed process to support that. But yes, it is hard when we're recruiting, 500, 600 teachers every year, as well as getting into the recruitment of bus drivers and some support staff too. So that's not something that we were anticipating, I guess, with our department when we first started back in 2014.
I don't know, Mr. Chairman, whether I should put this in a motion, because the school board member is here, to recruit on board that the teacher recruitment and retention should be expanded as a group. That's personal, maybe other support, I don't know.
Are you ready to form a motion? Is that where?
I wasn't sure, but I just want to make that, I think it's a very important move because Suzette is here, that department is very understaffed the way I know it. It needs more, Ms. Giovanelli. Needs more
Yes, it is
attention.
understaffed, but you also have a new director that is in there working and trying to make some changes, and so the support, he needs a lot of support to help with those changes, and that requires a superintendent who is behind him, but a board that allows it.
Right, that's what I'm saying, that
So I'm only one of 7.
whatever bottlenecks are there, they should be removed. We should be able to have people coming in and out and reaching out. Sometimes I feel guilty calling you all the time and telling you to come, because it's only one person, you can only do so much.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, perhaps as a point for your consideration, Dr. Dewey,
Yeah.
maybe that could be a talking point to Mr. Bendix's point at the next meeting when you all look at your recommendations.
That's true, yeah.
If you wanted to offer that for consideration when you have the more robust membership present.
And I know those questions Suzette brought up, we have discussed them in our April meeting, right?
Yes.
So that we-
Just one point for,
Yes, sir.
one of the things that I think would be helpful and the initiatives you have going on, if those can be packaged where we can share that out, like for me, to my teams on campus and saying, these are initiatives that are going on, I think that'd be helpful for me. And then for recruiting students, this is something, a note that I made a note of, it's, for a lot of students I work with, how do we incorporate ed tech into the profession? And then also to maybe marketing or packaging the profession of teaching. Because I think a lot of our students don't wanna go teach
Right.
because of how they were taught. So I don't wanna go back to classroom and do what happened to me. So this being more marketable of like the evolution of teaching and learning in the classroom, I think in package that helps people, because a lot of things like, I don't wanna go teach because my teachers were.
Because of their experience,
Yeah.
it's different now,
Right.
right,
So-
that's great.
So can I jump in on that? Cause that's some of my notes that I actually wrote down. I think we need to rebrand it. Like, teachers, the stigma with teachers now is like, it's just a terrible job. But is it really? I mean, they work 10 months out of a year, they get summers off. I mean, there's things we can highlight, especially being in Florida, to recruit from out of state, to highlight sunshine 24/7. I mean, there's just ways to rebrand it, and I'm not an expert on that aspect, but I think, especially to try to attract the career changers, try to attract those people that maybe don't wanna work from home. A lot of jobs have gone work from home. This is actually, if you're a people person, that person thrives with students. So I'm thinking we have to rebrand it, and that's exactly what you're saying, is how do we make it look like it's,
Attractive.
yeah, and cause there's just so much stigma with it anymore. Focus on all the positives versus the negatives that has come with it. Teach it to the test, all that stuff. But how about just changing lives? That's what the if you change that narrative where if you wanna be a person that can make it's so rewarding to be a teacher. And like, I think about my favorite teachers as a child, and I'm a product of Lee County. So, and I don't know, you might know him, Mr. Stebbins was my algebra teacher.
Richard Stevens.
And he was one of the best teachers I ever had in my life. And that's the only time I ever learned algebra. And it was in 7th grade at Lee Middle. And he not only taught me algebra, but he taught me so many other things I can't even express it. And he was just an awesome teacher. And when I saw his obituary one time in the thing, I was like, oh my gosh. Because it would just sit home and all the wonderful, you would not believe. It wasn't just my life he touched. He touched so many. Unbelievable. And he was just an awesome teacher. So don't let that just to have that influence in someone's life is so important. And you don't forget it. Never forget it. And so I think that's what's so important about the job is how many lives you can really touch and change. And it starts just with a simple teacher, being a simple teacher. And so many people out there now that don't want to work from home, they need that interaction. So that's what you highlight is, hey, you can be in the classroom with students and changing their life. And so I don't know, just my notes were, rebrand it, because it has to be, to get the excitement back out there. I don't know, there has to be some other opportunities that we can just totally highlight that you would know. But I think that, focusing on that and our location of sunny Florida, we won't talk about the housing part, but that's another thing, that's another conversation that we have to have as a community. This is not just a school district
No, we're seeing that at the university as well.
problem. It's working with the city and the county and we've got all these developers coming and we need to be talking and striking up deals to get, to have this affordable housing or at least attainable housing opportunities. We do have the SHIP program and the SAIL program, but that money runs out every year. And so I'm on the realtor side of it, we go to Tallahassee and fight for that money and try to increase it. And we do it to keep it because we don't want to lose that money, but it doesn't go very far. It just really truly doesn't. And but it's actually partnering with everybody. It truly takes the village to be able to continue the education, to be the best. We want to be the best because that will also bring people here as well. And the son's doing it. We know education can do it too with our kids. So.
Did you say with whether you have something about housing of teachers? Because that's a crucial factor here.
It's something we need to talk about again, and we don't do it. But it's a conversation like, so I'm on the affordable housing with the county, and I actually called the mayor because there was a group that was telling me to go to it was a planning committee meeting, and I thought it was an actual city council meeting, but it wasn't. It was a planning where there's about 7 or 8 new developments that they're talking about bringing in. Well, this is the time to strike with those developers and cut our deal. And we have to do it as a group, a collective body, because we can't do it as, Melissa, one person's asking for it, because it's not gonna happen. It's gonna take everybody to do that. And it takes, the city and the county has to work together with the school district. I asked a very high up city person, and I won't say who, I said, why aren't we doing this? Because we're not collaborating together. Why aren't we? Not effectively. I was told we're doing it, but I don't see the results. I gotta see results. So there aren't any. And so why aren't we doing it? I was told we don't play nice in the sandbox, quote. And we need to start playing nice, because you know what? We're not superior. We're not superior. We are equal. If not, we have the students, but we don't have the means. So we need to have the rest of that. It all works together.
Or you partner with an institution like HBCU because, it helps HBCU to have more local teachers back in the community. They're gonna have better educated students. It's a win-win for the community. It's a win-win for everyone. So get FGCU to either build more housing that can be used as part of this program, what's it called?
Call me Mr.
Yeah, Call Me Mister. They either build, they got a lot of donors, they build new housing, or they use some of the existing they use some of the existing housing, and it's part of a program. You come in, you go to school there, you get a scholarship or a tuition reduction, and then you get to live in this housing for up to 2 years at reduced rent as an incentive to keep them in the community. They don't have to pay, $25,000 a year in housing.
And something similar was actually presented to our board of trustees back in January at the board meeting. President Martin referenced something to that for new faculty, staff coming to the area for some housing. So that's at the board level right now being discussed. So.
Good.
But I agree with you. We want to keep our students here. We don't want to educate them and then move to Georgia or whatever, where it's a little more affordable to live. I mean, let's be real. And so that's happening. And can you blame them? Really, can we blame them? You can't. So that's how we lose people. So we have to change the narrative. We have to focus on what is going to be best for the outcomes for our students. And then the end result, it's best for our community. And so it keeps us as a strong community, inviting then that brings businesses here and they'll employ our students. It's just we can't just keep spinning our wheels and talking about stuff and not getting things done. And I feel like that we do a lot of talking and a lot less action. And but it takes everybody working together to do that. I believe Collier has something similar like that, where they actually live near the school and then go to work and come back and they're almost like they're watching the schools too. I mean, so it keeps less things going on, the vandalism and so forth when people are close by. So there's opportunity. We just have to think outside the box to do it. And go ahead.
Sorry, I want to say, when you think about it, all these teachers coming in are competing against everybody else. The Wall Street Journal, written Wall Street Journal, January 25th. The 6 years fastest housing market is Cape Coral, Fort Myers, in the whole country. And they are giving figures how the house market is rising. The housing rent you could have gotten $1,200 last year, now it's $1,800 or $2,000. We have to do something to attract these people to come. They may not even get a place to stay even if they want to come. We have to find out incentives for that.
We have to invest in our people, in our students.
And those who don't need housing because they don't live here.
You said someone told you to go to the meeting. Well, I'll tell you now, I'm sure I know a couple other people that went to some of these meetings. These builders, the city gives them tax breaks for those properties. And when you get a federal tax break, you have to set aside a certain amount of the properties for non-for-profit or housing, almost like Section 8.
Right.
If somebody was actually paying attention, those properties or apartments could be going, they're supposed to be for like civil servants, teachers, but see, nobody's paying attention.
I am,
Nobody's.
because I'm on the Affordable Housing
Oh,
City.
he's
I am, so
Well,
with you.
So
Go ahead.
those properties could be, apartments could be set aside especially for teachers.
Yeah.
And those rents could be controlled,
Right.
especially designated for teachers. And it is supposed to be rent controlled. And you couldn't make that, but so you have to work with
Okay.
somebody sitting on that CRA.
That's right.
And you have to make them. See, but I know he does go there, but that's one person.
Exactly.
Right.
But the rest of, do you know that, did you know that?
You're right.
When somebody told you, did you know that? Before they even pick up the first shovel of dirt,
That's right.
they have to set aside a certain amount
Correct.
in order to get that tax break. And all those apartments they built there on Ortiz,
Yes. You're right.
and those apartments supposed to be rent controlled. Do you think rent control starts at $3,000 an apartment?
No.
Okay, all right.
You're right. I brought that up at the last affordable housing meeting, and they looked at me like I had horns, and that's what you said. You called somebody high up, and I know exactly what it was. But yeah, you're right, you're on point, and I brought that up. I'm glad that you said that, and interesting that you said that.
So we have to rally here together and to go there.
That's right.
That's right, can't keep talking,
Right.
it's just lip service.
It's all-
We have to do something. And it starts with here.
Well, when you say it starts here and we have to do something, who do you mean? Because I think it starts with the school board respectfully. I think it's the school board that has to move.
Well, then you need to talk to 6 other board members then. And one person's not gonna get it done.
Well, I'm not saying one person has to get it done, I'm saying it's a school, it's a school board.
The
And it has
school
to
board
move the
hasn't
needle.
taken the school board, the prior school board was ran by administration. We worked for him. It's changed. And it's changed, but I don't know, I can't say what the new superintendent's gonna be like. I'm hoping it's gonna be a collaborative, working relationship. But prior to this, I'm sorry, but
I mean, this committee is not gonna move the needle. She's gonna go back to working with her 2 or 3 colleagues.
yeah,
She's not gonna move the needle.
no, she's not.
No, she's not. The
But-
school board needs, the seven of you working together respectfully, you are the ones who have
But
to
y'all have to
move
make the
needle.
recommendation to us and
Sure, we'll make a recommendation.
and not stay quiet. No, we're not one recommendation, you gotta keep going. You gotta keep, because it's not all 7 board members has the same idea and mindset.
So
In your report with Ms. Giovanelli, I don't know. The more you talk, the more I feel this is a very urgent issue we should be addressing.
I think it'd be appropriate for us to have.
We need a motion for it.
committee
Yeah, you don't have everybody, but I think it's-
Discuss that, so I think it's appropriate to make a
When,
note and we bring that to our April meeting, we make our recommendations.
and we missed the meeting, there's one meeting we missed
Correct.
to make up. You can always go for this, like an ad hoc meeting, this is a serious issues we're
Yeah,
dealing with.
we'll do that. I wanna make sure I be respectful of Ms. Rivera's time,
Yeah,
so.
sorry, I
You
got off
have
that.
you have one hand.
You have a question in the chat.
Am I being recognized?
You are now.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Are we able to make a motion at this time? Do we have quorum?
Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you. I would like to make a motion that we approach our current school board to look into ways that we can work together with our community developers, builders, leaders to find a way to get affordable housing presented to these folks who need it. Now, here's my big concern. You're going to hear from retail, you're going to hear from non-degreed medical employees, you're going to hear from a plethora of other industries who are going to want the same thing. And that's fine, that's all well and good, y'all. We're talking about trying to find ways to get more qualified, better teachers here in Lee County, and we would like to bring them in with some affordable housing. And just for a reference, I too, along with Melissa, I am a realtor. It's going to be an uphill battle. But it's not just one school board member or our committee or a handful of people. We have to get with the entire school board to get this started. So I would like to make that motion.
So I'm gonna restate that, so I can make sure I clarify for recording purposes. The motion on the floor
Sure.
for the board to engage in conversations with Lee County officials to explore ways for attainable housing for staffing.
That sounds perfect, Mr. Edie. Thank you very much.
That's
Or whoever that was that Christopher?
Dr. Blakely, you right,
Okay,
so I can
sorry.
actually copy it
Yes.
verbatim.
So we have a motion on the floor for the board to engage in conversations with Lee County officials
Thank you, Ms.
to explore ways for attainable housing for staffing. It's been moved, is there a second? Second.
Who moved it? That's Ms. Matt.
Holly, mine.
Oh, Matt, I said hello and I seconded. Oh, I thought the
Seconded by
motion.
Mr. Baxter.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I do wanna say a couple things. In the past, this board, part of this board, not all of the board, because some of them are fairly new, we've had conversations where there's been a couple groups that have come to us about attainable housing, but it's never really took off. It's never really had some interest. And that came from mostly staff. That came, and the recommendation from the superintendent, I'm gonna go back to the superintendent. But there was never, like I said, it just never really took off. And was never explored to the depth that it should be, let's put it that way. And there has to be more conversations about it.
Yes.
Just a question for the group, and perhaps Ms. House or Mr. Baxter may be able to answer this for us. But one area that they may be able to focus on is if, and please, this is my question to you two, do school district employees, teachers meet that federal criteria for that carve out? Is that part of the criteria? Would that fall under either a public, I don't know how it's written, is it public service or a
It's
public?
the AMI.
CMI.
Sorry, I'm flipping out.
Yeah,
So thank you for that question. So we're saying that the school district employees then do not qualify, is that correct?
Well,
For that program? I'm just trying to understand and educate also. I'm not saying that's our only avenue. I was just trying to educate myself based on what Ms. House, that point she brought up. Because if they did meet that criteria, that's a great starting point to exploit.
My understanding is they do. And again, it's still interpretation. And
Sure.
there's more than one program. And again, that's how some of these builders, contractors got the approval by allowing their interpretation to be met. And it's, you're just talking about here, I know in other places, especially like New York, don't mess with my R's again, okay? In New York, that's where the co-ops came up from. Those started with people living in co-ops, rent control, because those people generally started being people that were public employees, firemen, policemen, teachers. Those were rent controlled apartments. That's where those people started, lived there first.
So that makes perfect sense. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Edie, you're saying the current criteria, to your knowledge, Florida, or at least locally, the teachers don't meet that criteria, is that your understanding? Mr. Chairman, I don't
So-
know if I just-
Going back to Ms. Giovanelli, a lot of it goes back to the federal authorization and things connected with SHIP. And so what is the AMI, and what is the AMI set based on that number? So Crystal, like she was saying, looking at the average monthly, just what's online. This was data that was released as part of last year. But what is considered the extremely low AMI and kind of how you set and define affordable housing here. Extremely low AMI was about 80% or below. The maximum household income was 40,000. So it's just based on a lot of the conversation the city may be having related to a trust fund, and establishing a trust fund, and then how that AMI is connected to the threshold for that trust fund. So to Ms. House's point, there's several opportunities to engage related to affordable housing. I heard her mention the CRA, the Community Redevelopment Agency. Developers are asked to come in with a certain level of incentives. So are you partnering with a minority business? Are you giving something to a nonprofit? Or are you doing a project that's affordable housing? So there've been a number of projects that have come in relative affordable housing, but back to Ms. Giovanelli's point, what is the definition of affordable, attainable, or workforce? So that's just kind of some context that was unsolicited, but that helps with your discussion.
That makes sense, thank you,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much, I appreciate that.
Any further discussion? We have a current motion on the floor by Ms. Mark, properly seconded by Mr. Baxter. Further discussion?
Let's keep a vote.
Move for a vote.
How do you want to do it, or
Let's do a roll call.
Since you all are present, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to, you can take a voice vote.
Okay.
If you'd like to, and then we have,
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
do you oppose the motion? Amy, are you still with us?
That is horrid.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. Do I oppose the motion? No, I do not.
Okay, Holly is departed.
No objections?
Objections.
Thank you, Amy.
I'm gonna take a picture and I'll give it right back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Her name is Amy, not horrible.
Mr. Rivera, thank you so much for,
Oh, the two.
Thank you for the feedback
Amy.
and good information.
And also,
okay, and we'll make sure that in our April meeting, we'll discuss, what strategies and make sure.
That'd be great.
But that should, Mr. Chairman, that should be an important, one of the answers to your questions, is that on recruitment, what are the recruitment resources that we need? That is key, and the retention, the strategies for that. If we take care of the housing and the salaries and stuff like that, that's the basics. And also, again, I'll repeat, you need more manpower, you need more personnel in your office. Very important.
All right, thank you again. At this time, we'll move to our updates from our board liaison. I want to first thank for Ms. Giovanelli for joining us, and serving in this capacity, and so, yield time for you.
I don't have a lot to say, but I'll add to a little bit more of what I've already said, because I kind of said a lot. But I actually had a meeting today with the United Way with, her name is Jeannie and Hannah, and I don't have their last names, but they have two, and I know Mr. Edie's familiar with this too, and Crystal, at Franklin Park, they have a resource center basically, and they actually have one at Fort Myers Middle now, which I was excited to hear about. And they want to expand that more, and I mean, a lot more. And they show me what schools are utilizing their resources, and not every school is utilizing it. I was really shocked over that. And one really that shocked me was East Lee. They're not utilizing it like at all, maybe 2 students, compared to like Fort Myers High School, 38 students. Yeah, I was very shocked. Edison Park Elementary, 38 students or 37, it's close to that number. And Colonial, like 40 students, which I knew the need was there, so I wasn't surprised. That was the one I wasn't surprised about. But there were so many other schools that are not utilizing those resources, and I feel like it's because we're not telling our story. This is something I keep talking about, but we're not telling our story. Our story's not getting out there, and it starts with principals, I think, for this kind of stuff, because the resources there's so many resources there for even students for like just new shoes. How about just socks? The need is there. They just don't even know the resources are available for that. And so I think we have to do better in getting that information out there. In talking with the new superintendent, he is going to form like an advisory committee. And I'm gonna make sure that one of them, it's gonna be on his advisory committee. So he is really working already now, trying to gather the information, gain the knowledge about our district, and inform like a committee regarding getting information to him as well. He needs to know about us, right? Because he only can see what is online, and that's not enough to paint a picture, I hope. But so I just wanted to share that with y'all because I think it's something. Has United Way even done anything here to tell you what their resources are here for EDAC? I think it's something that y'all might want to put on your agenda because if that's getting that information out there, because I really want to see it at every school because there's always a need somewhere. You can't tell me that there's not a school that doesn't have a need. And to find out, like I said, Edison Park and Fort Myers High School, and they're utilizing it. I know it all depends on the counselors. She told me that there's really good guidance counselors at some versus others. So but that communication, that's just resources that can help the counselors. So I don't understand why you wouldn't utilize it at all. So year before they gave out $750,000 worth of merchandise or things to our school system. This year it's over $1 million. That's how it's increased. So and they have a lot of partners and they get, but they really want to increase it and want to be in more schools. I mean, they offer taxing, you help parents do their taxes. They'll do a one night. I know they recently they had told me they were going to do this at Franklin Park, and so there's a program. They gave me cards on it, but that's in my actually at home. But I just thought I'd just bring that information because it was very informative, and you forget about these things that exist, and we've got to talk about it more. So that's what I'm doing, is talking about it. I mentioned the Superintendent Advisory Committee and stuff, and I'm going to encourage at least someone from like EDAC and CSI, someone be on that to share the information, not just on your quarterly meetings to the board. Because I think that to work together, we have to, it's a continuous work. It's not just one meeting a month and one meeting every 4 months, you know what I mean? So actually I had affordable housing with the county on it to talk about, so I didn't mean to slide that in there, but that got in there. So you already know my conversation about that, because I just wanted to bring it to your attention because I thought it was an important conversation to find out that we're not really collaborating. That's a big deal to me, because and my definition of working together, I guess, might be different than what some others. My definition is action. So instead of just talking about it, so I'm going to keep pushing that envelope to get the board on track with that, like this gentleman said, and Mr. Bendick said. And I brought up the expulsion hearing, so that was on my note. Acceleration Academy. Do you know much about that, Mr. Edie? Has anybody talked to you about the Acceleration Academy?
Acceleration Academy within the system?
Yeah, well, it's a group,
Right.
or a group, I don't even know, it's a, I don't even know what, it's some kind of it's not really a grant. The Acceleration Academy would be a vendor, kind of basically, and what they do is, and this is something that's been conversations going on with the district back for many, many years, goes back maybe 2017. And the Acceleration Academy is a group that comes to, let's say, Lee County, and they open up a school. They have one, there's some in Miami-Dade, there's some in Port St. Lucie, there's one in Sarasota, they're in other places like Las Vegas, and other places up north. But what the Success Academy does is those dropout students that drop out and didn't receive a diploma nor a GED, but they're still eligible to graduate, they go and knock on the door and find those students. And when they find those students, they bring them back and they get them on track if these students are willing, but it takes some work. They literally knock on the doors to recruit these students back into the system. They become back to the school, they belong to Lee County School District, and they actually, if it's credit, or if it's whatever they're missing to graduate, if it's the FSA or whatever, they actually help that student get and achieve an actual diploma, not a GED, but a diploma. And the school, I went to the school in Sarasota, and it was in a Publix shopping center, literally next door to a Publix, in a room just like this. And they had students working on their own. They had a conference, little conference center, and they would test them, whatever they were doing, they were working, and it was individualized studies. And believe it or not, Sarasota has graduated numerous kids, so has Port St. Lucie, Miami-Dade, it's very successful in Miami-Dade. So this is something that's been very passionate of mine, because I feel like we lose up to 800 to 1,000 students about this time of year to charter schools, because they're not on the track to graduate. And so they'd rather get them out of the system so that number doesn't hurt our numbers. But to me, that's just a shell game. And that's not fixing my job is to make sure that everybody gets educated properly. And so when we lose them to charter schools, we can't talk about it, how their negative graduation rates are really what's impacting ours, because they're our students too. So I have really, and I'm not the only school board member, because I know others have gone there, but we've really had a lot of pushback. Now that administration has changed, I think that the opportunity is back there. By the way, these students would come back, like I said, to the Lee County school system, and they get the FTE money. That's where the money comes from. It comes back from the state. So it's money that we're missing. And it doesn't, and the group uses the money to educate the kids, but 10% of that FTE money comes back to the district. So it's a win-win, but mostly it would increase our graduation rates. And that is most important to me, because that's the ultimate game plan for me, is to increase our graduation rates that are effective and our students graduate. So I would recommend also that you get to hear more about the Acceleration Academy, because I need more people to understand it and buy in on it, and I think this group it's a perfect group for that, because it actually most of those students are socioeconomic status is very difficult. They do not have the foresight to get back into the school system for whatever reason, even if it was they dropped out to have a baby. They don't have the foresight to get back in and to get that diploma. And that diploma is so important, because it determines the outcome of the rest of their life. So that's one of the things that I have on my list to talk about, because this group would be the group that would really have a better understanding, and because I think that's your focus. That's your mission. And then I remembered it was called Project Yes, and Judge Jim Seals, I had to go back and look at my old emails, and he was the judge on that. And we had Mike Scott, we had all kinds of officers, it was a big, huge group. And it got nixed. I honestly, I'm gonna send you the emails, and then you can see a little bit of, I'm hoping that the attachments will come through. I couldn't open them, but I'm gonna try to send you the emails.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can look at that and might shed a little light on it. But that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good job. Are you coming back to EDAC next year?
Maybe, they let me. I was gonna try to come back this year, but they decided, the day they picked they did it on a day that I wasn't there. So I actually came back to not being on any committees at all, and had to fight for that. I'd fight to get on one, so.
Good, thank you. Good report, good. You prepare your work very well.
Could I ask, do you have any information on these advancement academies? Is that what?
Acceleration Academy.
Acceleration.
I can give you the emails, and I can email them to him, and you can email them out, if that works. I can send you the emails about, has their information. I get monthly stuff from them, because they've been doing this a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd
Thank
be great
you.
if you could do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll go to our update from our staff liaison, Mr. Jerry.
I don't have anything. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see everybody.
Anything good of the order?
Yeah, this is, I think it's quite sad news. Just to think about my friend, Mr. Kibo, who I've been texting to be here, but unfortunately his father just passed away.
Oh, he did? Oh.
Just he knew I was going to say that.
Thoughts with his family.
That's why he's not here.
He just got back from,
Just now, today.
St. Louis. Just got back.
Anyway,
And just one additional thing. Next month's meeting, if the chair and Ms. Vaughn decide to use the same format from last year, you all have an opportunity to kind of work through your recommendation and the document presentations you all received last year and work through a protocol to go back through where we started in September and offer any additional recommendations that you would like to make, very similar to what you all did tonight. So that's the format of April's meeting, pending the chair and Ms. Vaughn's deliberation.
Mr. Edie, I agree with that, but I was just wondering whether it's really, we have a crisis, my friends. There's need for a targeted meeting, and like an ad hoc meeting. We just watched Suzanne just talk about the crisis, from the great resignation to addressing those three questions Suzette has there on the resources and what we can do together to recommend to the board and to the counties and to everybody else. Just a targeted ad hoc meeting. So I'm proposing the meeting we missed in February, is it February or March, one of them we missed?
We met in February, missed in January.
We missed the one we missed in January, and we made up just for that item and that item alone. It was a crisis.
I understand, I think the recommendation was to make one step to recommend to the board. I agree that there's some conversation to be had, to have a meeting solely for that. I guess we can deliver more of a scope of our role in, because it is a crisis, EDAC is not gonna fix that crisis. So schedule a meeting on that.
I'm not saying, just like Mr. Peter expressed first, but some of these we just try to move the needle a little bit, whichever way.
And that's what the April meeting is for, to make recommendations to the board, so we're gonna be discussing
Right.
all topics for the year to make recommendations to the
But
board.
I understood for the year, for April meeting, it's for the umbrella of everything we have recommended, it's everything. I was talking about a targeted for this particular issue here now. But it's okay if it was to be discussed then, but I just wanted to.
Targeted, I'm sorry, Doctor, targeted for which issue?
The issues of the teachers, the teachers, both the recruitment, the great resignation, the resources, the retention, these numbers are very scary, Mr. Bedek. What I'm trying to say is.
Well, I agree, I think it's probably the biggest issue,
That's right.
and the lack of diversity within the school board is also one of the biggest issues in my
And you
opinion.
brought up some number of issues of social justice which I talked about, Mr. Bedek. All these issues, even diversity of the treatment of the kids, there are a number of issues all weaving around the same issue. And that's what I was saying. We focus on that in one meeting alone. I don't know whether there's need for that meeting, but Mr. Chairman, it's up to you. I know we're
I
talking
think
about.
we approached the April meeting to see if we're able to achieve what we're seeking, and if not, then we can discuss it at that time.
That's okay, Mr. Chairman. But remember, we still having a meeting in May?
The committee doesn't meet during the month of May, Dr. Dianui.
Yeah, those who are saying sometimes when a committee recommends they have a meeting, they can have a meeting if they choose to.
Correct, but you asked what
That's what,
doesn't
yeah,
mean.
no, I'm saying,
It's not setting schedule for May.
that's what I was coming with the idea of another meeting. We normally have met in May, but I was not scheduled. When we ask for a meeting.
Yeah, I think my recommendation, and I don't speak solely for the committee, is that we meet in April to seek out some of these things we discussed and see if there's things that are made that we are not able to reach a understanding before moving toward another meeting. So that's just my recommendation.
Okay, that's good. It's good compromise.
Anything else good in the order?
And I will say, if I may, to Dr. Dianui's point, your committee did approve a recommendation to the point of being shared with Ms. Giovanelli in the committee to have the board consider doing something just what you said. So I don't want you to feel you didn't take any action. Technically, you did when you passed a motion by Ms. Marth.
Okay.
You've already made a
We already did,
recommendation
okay,
related to housing and asking the board to go deeper into that.
right.
So I just wanted to make sure I wanted to take you all back to,
Okay.
you all did take action in that direction within your
That's all.
program.
That's all right.
In addition to whatever you all decide next month.
And in addition, I know this sounds very boring, that department needs to be expanded, there's a lot of work needed there. Suzette, you need more people, and I'm not saying just because you are here, I don't think it's given enough respect, it needs more.
Alright, if there's nothing else good in the order, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Move with the Mary. And no objections, none on the chat.
Even Mr. Baxter did not object?
No.
Motion to adjourn by unanimous consent, no objections. Thank you again for being here, we'll share our information regarding our April meeting.